Here's what they never advertised in 1990. The biggest movie of the year almost didn't have an ending. For a full year, the writer and the director rewrote the same script, and neither of them could work out how the story should close. The director didn't want the leading man. The woman who walked out of the Oscars with a statue has said, in her own words, that nobody wanted her either. And the scene everyone remembers was built on a throwaway song from a 1955 prison picture. This is Ghost from 1990. The production story is stranger and colder than the film. Let's start the countdown. Number 15. The most spiritual moment in the movie was a technical scramble done against the clock. The ending, where Sam finally walks into the light, was handed to effects legend Richard Edlund and his company Boss Film. By Edlund's own account, there was almost no time left. In 1990, the standard way to blend two images together was an optical printer. Slow, precise, expensive, Edlund's team went a different route and leaned on video effects. The kind of tools television was using, because video was fast and the calendar was brutal. The glowing heaven you remember was assembled in a rush, under a release date that would not move. The rest of the supernatural work was split up too. Other houses handled Sam passing through solid doors and the dark shapes that come for the killers at the end. Here's the crazy part. Those shadow figures are now the most mocked thing in the whole picture. Critics and comedy shows have been laughing at them for decades. The same film that made grown adults cry also gave us effects people openly call ugly. One ending. Two reputations. It became the emotional high point of a blockbuster and the punchline in 100 parody reels. Number 14. One of the biggest stars on the planet read this script, shrugged and handed it back, and then had to watch it explode. Bruce Willis turned down the role of Sam Wheat. His reason was simple and honest. He didn't understand the script. A man dies in the first act, spends the film unable to touch anyone, and solves his own murder through a con artist. On paper, in the middle of the action hero 80s, that read like nonsense. Years later, Willis was blunt about it. He called himself a knucklehead for passing. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. At the time, Willis was married to Demi Moore. Moore took Molly. Ghost became the highest-grossing film of 1990, and it lifted her into a different tier of stardom entirely. That same year, both of them had #1 films in American theaters, a married couple record that stood for 34 years until Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds matched it in 2024. So the record he shares came from the movie he refused. He said no to a ghost story he thought made no sense. It became the most talked-about film of the year, in his own house. Number 13. Before Patrick Swayze, the part of Sam Wheat sat in a pile of polite rejections from some of the most powerful men in Hollywood. Harrison Ford said no. Michael J. Fox said no, because he didn't think the film would work, and later admitted he'd got it wrong. Willis had already walked away. Other names float around this story too. For years fans repeated that Kevin Bacon turned it down, and in 2024 Bacon flatly denied it, so treat that one as rumor, not fact. The same goes for the long-running claim about Paul Hogan. Told often, never nailed down. Look at what the confirmed names have in common. These were smart, careful actors with excellent instincts. Every one of them read a screenplay about a murdered banker, a psychic hustler, and a warning from beyond death, and saw a career risk instead of a hit. Then it opened, and became the biggest film of the year on a budget of about $22 million, pulling in over $500 million worldwide. The A-list read the future of 1990 and threw it in the bin. A television dance star picked it out. Number 12. The role of Molly went through a casting carousel that reads like a 1989 yearbook of famous women. Michelle Pfeiffer was considered. So was Molly Ringwald, who auditioned and then walked away from the lead. Meg Ryan's name came up, Julia Roberts, just before Pretty Woman detonated. Nicole Kidman, still new to American movies. Reports from the time also list actresses who passed because they thought the whole premise was silly, and others who wouldn't touch the intimacy in the script. Think about that word. Silly, not offensive, not badly written. silly. A grieving woman, a potter's wheel, and a dead boyfriend nobody else can see. Meanwhile, the writer and the director already had their answer. Demi Moore was the choice both Bruce Joel Rubin and Jerry Zucker wanted. And they got her. Showed up with the cropped hair and the raw, unglamorous grief that carries the entire second half of the film. The twist is what happened next. Nearly every actress on that list went on to a huge 90s career anyway. Only one of them got the crying scene that people still quote. A parade of stars looked at Molly and saw a joke. Moore looked at Molly and saw a war of attrition. Number 11. Before any of this, Ghost spent 2 years being rejected in rooms all over Los Angeles. Bruce Joel Rubin wasn't a star writer. He had one strange question in his head. What if you told a ghost story from the ghost's side? He couldn't crack it until he watched a stage production of Hamlet and saw the murdered king standing on the parapet telling his son who killed him. That was the key. A dead man who wants his own murder solved. He wrote a short treatment. His wife, Blanche, read it and told him plainly that this was a movie. Then came the grind. Rubin has said he spent 2 years pitching Ghost, walking executives through a story where the hero dies early and can't be seen, heard, or touched. 2 years of nodding, of maybes, of no. Here's the payoff. When it finally sold and finally got made, that same rejected pitch won the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, and the film picked up 5 nominations, including Best Picture. 2 years of doors closing on a script about a man nobody can hear. The joke wrote itself, and nobody in those rooms noticed. Number 10. When Rubin found out who was going to direct his metaphysical love story, his stomach dropped. Jerry Zucker's Ursum at that point was Airplane, Top Secret, and The Naked Gun, the parody factory he built with his brother David and Jim Abrahams. Zucker had never directed a straight drama in his life. Rubin had written a serious film about death, grief, and the afterlife, and it was being handed to the man responsible for the most famous gag films of the era. Other names had circled the project. Frank Oz, of all people, came close to directing it. Rubin's fear was reasonable. He thought his careful, spiritual script would be turned into a joke machine. Then the two men had dinner, not a pitch meeting. Dinner, they talked as people, not as writer and director, and Rubin's resistance collapsed. Zucker turned out to be dead serious about the material, so serious that studio insiders reportedly assumed the comedy guy simply wouldn't get the job. And Zucker's comedy training is exactly why the film works. He knew precisely how long an audience can sit in grief before it needs to laugh. The parody king was hired to make people cry. He did both in the same scene over and over. Number 9. Oda Mae Brown was not written as a fraud. She was written as the real thing. In Rubin's original conception, the psychic who hears Sam actually had the gift. No storefront hustle, no fake voices, no phony trance for grieving widows. Producers pushed back. They argued the film would be funnier and stranger if she were a complete con artist who suddenly starts hearing a genuine dead man in her ear. That single change rebuilt the movie. It gave the story its comedy, its panic, and its best running gag, a cheat who is furious that the afterlife has decided to be real on her watch. And the casting search for her was wild. Tina Turner, Patti LaBelle, and Oprah Winfrey were all either considered or auditioned for the part. Here's the twist. That rewrite, made for laughs, produced the performance that won the film one of its 2 Academy Awards. The fake medium became the emotional bridge between the living and the dead. When Oda Mae finally lets Sam use her body so Molly can hold him one last time, the whole con collapses into something devastating. They flattened a genuine psychic into a scam artist to lighten the tone. It ended up carrying the heaviest scene in the film. Number 8. 1990 gave audiences 2 films from the same writer. One made the world weep. The other made people afraid to close their eyes. While Ghost was on its way to becoming the top grossing release of the year, Bruce Joel Rubin's other screenplay hit theaters, Jacob's Ladder, directed by Adrian Lyne. Same year. Same writer. Same obsession with what happens in the moments around death. But Jacob's Ladder is a nightmare. A Vietnam veteran. Hallucinations that eat reality. Faceless figures with shaking heads. Hospital corridors from hell. Its imagery went on to inspire entire horror franchises and video games. Where Ghost offers a warm light at the end, Jacob's Ladder offers a trapdoor. Look at them side by side, and you see the same man asking the same question from two directions. One version says the dead are still here, watching over you. The other says the dead may not know they're dead at all, and that what looks like a life can be the last minutes of one. One of those scripts won an Oscar and sold $500 million in tickets. The other became a cult horror text that people still argue about. Same writer. Same year. Same fear. Only the lighting changed. Number 7. The most romantic needle drop in movie history started life inside a prison picture nobody remembers. Unchained Melody was written for a 1955 film called Unchained, set in a California prison. Music by Alex North, lyrics by High Zarette. The story long told is that Zarette initially turned the job down because he was too busy painting his house. Take that one as a well-worn legend rather than gospel, but the film itself is real. The song is named after a prison movie, not a love story. The Righteous Brothers recorded their version in 1965, and it was originally treated as a secondary track, not the main event. Then, Ghost put it under the pottery scene, and something strange happened. In 1990, a 25-year-old recording climbed back up the charts, hit number 1 in the United Kingdom, and returned to the American top 10. Unchained Melody has now topped the British chart in 4 different versions by 4 different acts across decades, a record no other song holds. A prison drama theme, written by a lyricist who reportedly had a paintbrush in his hand, became the sound of grief and longing for an entire generation. The song outlived the film it was written for. Then it outlived most of the films that borrowed it. Number 6. One actor fought hard for his role in Ghost and spent years paying for winning it. Tony Goldwyn wanted Carl Brunner, the smiling best friend who arranges Sam's murder. Reports from 1990 say he pursued the part aggressively. He was also Hollywood royalty by blood, grandson of Samuel Goldwyn, one of the men who built the studio system. Then the movie came out, and audiences did not treat Carl as fiction. Goldwyn has said he was shocked and stunned by how much people hated his character. Not disliked. Hated. Strangers reacted to him in public with real hostility. He'd played a coward who gets his friend killed over laundered money and then goes after the widow, and he'd played it so smoothly that viewers couldn't separate the man from the part. Here's the twist. That hatred is proof the performance worked. Carl only lands if you first believe he loves Sam and Molly. Goldwyn made the betrayal feel like a knife, and then absorbed the audience's reaction for years afterward. He chased that role harder than anyone. Reward was a decade of people looking at him like he'd actually done it. Number 5. The scariest few minutes in Ghost don't come from the killers. They come from a dead man on a subway train. The subway ghost was played by Vincent Schiavelli, a Brooklyn-born character actor who spent his career as the strange, sad-eyed man in the corner of great films, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Amadeus, and dozens more. He stood 6'6", and he often attributed his height and his unusual features to Marfan syndrome, a connective tissue condition. He turned that into a weapon here. His ghost is not sad. He is enraged. He was pushed onto the tracks, he knows it, and death has not calmed him down at all. He screams at Sam that it wasn't his time. He knocks cigarette packs out of a machine and stares at them, desperate for one drag he'll never have again. That's the moment the film quietly tells you what the afterlife costs. Not fire, not judgment, just wanting. Schiavelli teaches Sam how to move objects, and then disappears from the story. It's a supporting turn of maybe a few minutes, and people who haven't seen Ghost in 20 years still remember him. He died in 2005 at 57. The film sold romance on the poster. Its most honest scene is a furious dead man begging for a cigarette. Number 4. For a full year, the two men making this movie could not figure out how to end it. By Rubin's own account, he and Zucker wrote and rewrote the script for about a year, and the one piece that refused to come together was the final scene. Everything else worked. The murder, the con artist, the subway, the countdown to Molly's danger. But the goodbye, the moment a dead man leaves the woman he loves for good, kept collapsing. Think about the trap. Make it too big and it turns into fantasy nonsense. Make it too small and you cheat the audience out of the only thing they've been waiting 2 hours for. And the film could not simply fade out, because the entire premise was that death is not the end. What they landed on is almost embarrassingly simple. Molly finally sees him. He tells her he's taking the love with him. He says the ditto line back to her. Then he walks into light that had to be built at the last minute by an effects crew racing the release date. The hardest 90 seconds in the film took a year to solve and days to shoot. They had the whole afterlife to play with. The problem was always just saying goodbye. Number 2. The director of Ghost did not want Patrick Swayze anywhere near this film. Zucker has been open about it. He was dead set against him. The version repeated in interviews for years is that he said it would happen over his dead body. To Zucker, Swayze was the dirty dancing guy, a hip-swinging heartthrob, wrong for a grieving dead banker in a New York thriller. So Rubin went around him. Rubin saw Swayze in a Barbara Walters interview talking about his late father. Not performing. Grieving on camera. Rubin recognized something the casting conversation had completely missed. This man understood loss from the inside. He got the project to Swayze behind his director's back. Swayze auditioned. And by every account from the room, he destroyed it. Zucker changed his mind on the spot. Here's what that stubbornness bought the film. Swayze plays the first half of Ghost with almost nothing in his hands, no touch, no voice anyone can hear, no way to warn her. All he has is his face. The panic in the hospital, the fury in the apartment, the helplessness in the alley. The director's instinct was to protect his serious drama from a dance star. The dance star turned out to be the only reason the drama has a pulse. Number 1. The performance that won Ghost an Oscar came from an actress the filmmakers actively did not want, and she only got in because Patrick Swayze refused to move. Neither Zucker nor Rubin were interested in Whoopi Goldberg for Oda Mae Brown. She wasn't in their plan. Casting people worried her personality would swallow the film. Goldberg has spoken about this many times since, and she has been direct about it. She was not wanted, and in her telling the reason came down to who she was. She has pointed straight at her race. Swayze had already been cast, and he had already been the underdog in his own casting fight. He pushed for her. By Goldberg's own account, he made it clear he wanted her in the film, and he kept pushing until she got in the room. She got the part. Then she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, becoming the first black woman to win in that category since Hattie McDaniel back in 1940. 50 years between them. 50 years. And she has said, on the record and repeatedly, that she owes that Oscar to Swayze. The studio machine looked at her and said no. An actor nobody had wanted either looked at her and refused to make the movie without her. That decision changed Academy Award history. Bonus fact. Here's the part the awards footage never mentions. Patrick Swayze was not nominated for an Oscar for Ghost, not for Best Actor, not for anything. The film received 5 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture, and won 2, Goldberg for Best Supporting Actress and Rubin for Best Original Screenplay. It lost Best Picture to Dances with Wolves. Swayze earned a Golden Globe nomination in the drama category, and that was it from the Academy. The man who carried the emotional weight of the biggest film of 1990, who fought his own director's rejection to get hired, and who fought again to get his co-star hired, went home with nothing. Goldberg has kept saying his name for decades. Interview after interview, she credits him for the role and the statue. Swayze died in 2009 at 57 from pancreatic cancer. He never got another shot at that kind of recognition. A film about a man who does everything right and still can't be seen. And the actor playing him spent Oscar night in the audience, invisible, That's the pattern under this whole production. Ghost sold itself as a love story, but the paperwork behind it is a record of refusals. Willis said no. Ford said no. The director said no to his leading man. The filmmakers said no to Goldberg. Studios said no for 2 years straight. Almost every person who shaped this film had to be argued into it, and the ending they're most praised for was the one thing they couldn't crack until the clock ran out. The version you've watched a dozen times is smooth, warm, and inevitable. Nothing about making it was. So which one actually got you? The finale built in a rush? The subway ghost begging for a cigarette? Or Swayze quietly forcing open a door for Whoopi Goldberg while the room told her no? Tell me in the comments. If you want more buried production truth from old Hollywood classics, like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so the next file finds you.